When I was 11 years old, I went to stay the night at my grandma's house, and her house was on some farmland, so it was in the middle of nowhere. And she didn't really have a big plot of land either, so the house I was staying in for about a week was pretty small. There was something that always bothered me about the house, and it was that every single night around 9:45 p.m., my grandma would go outside into this tiny shed she had and would stay in there for 3 hours or so, then come back and act like nothing happened. So I eventually got really interested with the shed out back, and then 2 days later, I started to walk towards the shed, and then she screamed at me to stop. My heart literally froze because no one has ever screamed like that around me before, maybe yell or something. But it was like a screeching sound, something you would hear from an elk, but it formed a word saying, stop. But it was so hard to understand from the way she screamed it. I dashed back into the house and went into the living room. I was sleeping in the living room. She was really scared I would ruin her furniture in the other rooms, which there was only 2. Once I got in the living room, I sat in there waiting for my grandma to scream at me, saying reasonings why I shouldn't have gone in there, but she never talked to me. She just stared at me for solid 10 minutes, then wandered off. It gave me serious chills. One night later, I woke up to hear breathing, and I opened my eyes slowly to see my grandma staring at me. Her eyes looked bloodshot. I don't know if she was on drugs or what, but she stared at me for an hour. I couldn't even speak because of how scared I was. My voice quivered, and I remember this vividly. She said, "I'm here," over and over and over, until she stopped and slowly turned away and walked away. And then the next morning, she acted like nothing happened. I then asked if I could go home, and my grandma said I would have to wait a day, which certainly wasn't my best interest. But I had no choice, so I waited. I eventually went back outside and played frisbee by myself, and then the frisbee hit the shed. I smelled something so horrible I threw up. My grandma stared at me through the window and smiled, and then walked away. Now realizing now that I'm older, my grandma was very strange, but I never found out what was in the shed and if she was on drugs.